Hello! Today we're making bagels. Bagels definitely fall into that category of things that are cheaper and easier to get at the store. Well, I don't know about cheaper, but definitely easier to get at the store. But I enjoy making them at home. So if you're like me and you enjoy the process of making something, bagels is great for that. It's very satisfying to make something at home that you normally would only buy at the store. A small bit of feeling of accomplishment in that. So yep, I'm gonna show you how I make bagels. Let's go. I use Joshua Weissman's recipe for the bagel dough. It starts with 500 grams of bread flour, 23 grams of white sugar, 10 grams of instant yeast, a pinch of salt, and give that a good mix. Add 297 grams of warm water and mix up. You can continue to knead the dough in your stand mixer if it's easier for you or if you want to. I like to do the good old slap and fold out on the cutting board. I like a good chewy bagel, which means I'm going to want to knead my dough more. More kneading your dough equals a chewier bagel as a finished product. So all I'm doing here is literally slapping down the very sticky dough onto my cutting board and folding it over on itself to knead it instead of the traditional way you would knead dough because it's too sticky for that. And then I'm going to grease my bowl with some oil, plop my dough in, and let it rise for an hour. Once it's risen, I'm going to divide it into 8 equal pieces and then let those rest for 10 minutes. Then you're ready to form your balls into bagels. You can do this two ways. Create a hole using your thumb and index finger on the front and back and just punch them through to make a hole. Or you can roll out your dough kind of like a snake in a cylinder and then wrap it around on itself, creasing each end together to create a bagel shape. The next step for making your bagels after they've risen in their shape is to boil them or simmer them in water for a couple minutes per side and then put them back on the sheet tray and into the oven at 425 for about 20 minutes. What I want to mention though is when you're shaping your bagels and making the hole on the inside, I made my holes like a little bit bigger than I actually wanted them to be when they're done, because this is why. As you can see, when they rose, a couple of these, like this one, is nearly completely closed up and there's no more hole. This one got a lot smaller. Like as they rise, they puff up in every direction, which means into the hole you've created. So make the hole bigger than you think it should be to begin with. And right now, like I can, put my fingers back in there and kind of reform the hole. So I will do that before I put them in the simmering water. So I'm gonna take the plastic wrap off. A couple of these are bigger than I intended them to be, but that's fine. I have made bagels a few times before and they've turned out really well. I like them a lot. But this time, I don't know if it was the temperature of just like the day or actually, to be honest, they might have overproofed because I set them to proof and then we were watching a movie and the timer went off and I was like, oh, it's okay. I'll go get it in a second. And then I just sat there and watched the rest of the movie and then I was like, oh crap. If you've never done the poke test before to check if bread, anything that rises, you can use the poke test to see if it's risen enough and is ready for whatever next step comes in making that thing, that bread, or in this case bagel. What I'm doing is just poking the bagels with my finger, and it should kind of stick to your finger a little bit when you pull it off, but leave a small indent of your finger. However, this bagel in particular down here concerns me because you see how you might not be able to see it, I hope that you can, but this side of it is kind of collapsed back down, which usually means that it's risen too much. It's proofed for too long. Because what happens when you're letting something rise, what happens is it lets off gases that expand the dough, and it gets to a point where there's so much gas that it can collapse back down. It just collapses and turns back into flat, very dense bread once it's cooked. So we don't want that. But like the rest of these look fine, so I think it'll be okay. So I'm just waiting for my water to boil or come to a simmer. The reason that you put them in the water to simmer is to create that like bagel crust on the outside. And the longer you leave them simmer, the kind of crustier it will end up being. I like mine with a nice crust and super chewy. So I kneaded my dough for longer because that will create that like chewy texture. And that was earlier. And then here at this step, I like the nice crust on the outside. So I'm going to simmer them for 2 minutes on each side rather than 1 minute. I like my bagel to be like you have to tear it with your teeth off. I don't want it to be soft like a piece of white bread, because then just eat white bread. What's the point? We're gonna simmer our bagels and then we're going to bake them at 425. 425? Yes, 425. Wow. I should just trust my gut instinct. 425 for 20 minutes. I'm gonna make the everything bagel seasoning because that is the only seasoning that anyone should be putting on their bagel. It is delicious. Before they go in the oven, I am going to egg wash them and then put the seasoning on. What that does is 1, adhere the seasoning to the bagel dough, and 2, brown the bagel and help with the crust. That is the plan. If this water would simmer, that would be fantastic. I'm so hungry. All right, let's make the seasoning in the meantime. I just mix mine in a jar because I just put everything in a little jar and then shake it up to stir it. And then I keep it in the jar, in the cupboard. So you don't need a bowl, save on dishes. I'm gonna use 2 tablespoons of onion flakes. I would use also 2 tablespoons of garlic flakes, but I don't have any at the moment. Sad for me. 1 tablespoon of poppy seeds and 1 tablespoon of sesame seeds. And then, and salt. Half of a tablespoon. Half a tablespoon of salt. Then I just put the lid on and shake it up. And then that's it. It's ready to use, super easy. And then I just keep it in the cupboard in this container. Once your water is at a simmer, drop your bagels in for 1 to 2 minutes per side, like I mentioned earlier. The thing you don't want to do here is have your water so hot that it's at a rolling boil. That's too hot. You want it at a nice gentle simmer. While I'm waiting the eternity that it's taking for these to be done, it always takes longer when you're hungry. I am going to mix up some cream cheese. I like cream cheese that is super like light and fluffy, and I also like it spicy. I really like the flavor combination of creamy and spicy together in a lot of different things. So one of the things that I love to do when I make bagels at home is get some cream cheese and whip it with finely chopped jalapeno. It adds like this crunch texture and some spice, and then with the creamy like fluffiness of the cream cheese, it's really, really good and very easy. I'm just gonna throw this in the stand mixer for a couple minutes to get it frothy. Every once in a while, depending on if the cream cheese is softened or not, I have to add just like a splash of milk in there. Not too much because you don't want to make it liquidy, but if you're finding that it's really chunky and won't really get like whipped up, you can just go bloop with some milk, and that usually helps kind of get it going so that it can be fluffy. Once your bagels are done with their bath, you can brush them in egg wash and then sprinkle your seasoning on top before putting them in the oven at 425 for around 20 minutes. Okay, they just came out of the oven and I think that they're overproofed, but I haven't tried them yet. A few of them are like collapsed more than others and kind of flat, like, ooh, it's still very hot. But like this one is very flat. So that usually means it overproofed, which is totally my fault because I was busy watching a movie. But I'm gonna try them and we'll see. It's very hot, but I am very impatient because I am so hungry. So I am probably gonna burn my mouth. Ooh, that's hot. It is very hot. Ooh, okay. Burning the fingies right off. Oh, actually, you know what? This looks pretty good. Like the crumb of that actually looks pretty good. So maybe I was wrong. These are definitely not the prettiest bagels I've ever made, but let's see how they taste. Oh my God. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's just because I'm starving, but this is really good. But to be honest, it did not turn out how I thought it was going to. I've made this in the past several times, and I've never had this problem with like the dough being so sticky. I mean, again, it's probably my fault for letting it rise for too long while I was watching a movie. Moral of the story, don't get distracted while you're proofing your bagels. It's not a total waste. I'm still gonna eat these and they're still really good. So it's not a complete failure. But next time I will know that I really need to go shape the dough when the timer goes off. That's how you learn stuff. Like, you have to make these little mistakes along the way, and that's how you're gonna learn. Like, honestly, I hate this like YouTube and Instagram picturesque home cook that people have put out into the world that makes everybody feel like if they make a mistake when they're cooking and it doesn't turn out how that Instagram picture looks or how it was in the YouTube video, that you have super failed and you are a horrible cook or something like that. No, like, it's fixed up for Instagram. Like, it's fixed up to be on the internet because nobody wants to show their failures. That's silly, but cooking is about failing. That's how you learn. You have to fail. You're going to fail often if you're starting, less often if you're more experienced, because you'll know how to prevent mistakes. But I mean, this is something that I've made a bunch of other times and I still, like, it's not a complete failure, like I said, but it's not how I wanted it to turn out or even how good it's been in the past. I've made other batches with this exact same recipe and they've turned out super round and fluffy and exactly how I wanted them. So I know that I can do it. Just don't distract yourself by watching a movie and you'll be fine. Anyway, don't get caught up. If you're just starting to cook, don't get caught up in this perfect photoshopped picture of food that you see online and aim for that. Don't aim for that. Aim for what you want to make. Make the mistakes and embrace them because that's how you learn. All right, well, I don't know where that came from, but anyways, I'm gonna go scarf down some bagel now and have some coffee to go with it. If you like this video or you learned something, give it a like. If you'd like to learn more, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching and I will see you next time. Bye.